40 seconds ago, I'm excited to buy my dream car. Now I'm about to get mauled by a bunch of dogs. So I've loved cars all my life, and I especially love like big, giant, hoopty, lowrider, cool cars. And that led to my first car, that 63 Buick LeSabre, which has gotten mentioned on this channel several times. Just I've had all sorts of cars, sports cars, off-road trucks, all kind of things, classics. I've got a great old Lincoln Continental right now that my buddy David gave me, but I just always had this thing for Impalas. And the best of those to me was the 94 to 96 B-Body Super Sport Impalas. I remember when this car first came out, I'm looking at Hot Rod Magazine, I'm flipping the pages, and it's like this 2-page spread, and it's just this like big, long, sinister looking blacked out car, like kind of backlit, dark studio. And in the title, the caption just said, "Lord Vader, your car is ready." And I was like, ooh, that was great. You know, it had the LT1 V8, which was the fuel injected 350. It was in the Camaros and Corvettes of the day. And, which were cool cars, but to me, I just loved this, just this big, long, sinister, sleek looking car. And I thought, man, I was in college at the time, but I was like, man, I'm going to have one of those someday. So, of course, I can't afford a car at all in college. I got one ratty motorcycle, but, I get out of school and I get a job doing movie special effects, which didn't pay a whole lot, but it was enough where I could actually have a car again. And I just immediately just got on and started looking for these cars. Now, this is in 1996, and that was the last year of the Impalas. The 96 differed from the 4 and 5 in that it had a console shift, just a little more sporty, and that was the one I wanted. So I start combing, looking for these things. Of course, it's a current model car, so they're for sale everywhere. Cost-wise, it was about what I made in a year at my job, but I just wanted one so badly. So I started doing the numbers, trying to figure out, okay, if I just eat like cereal and water and don't go on any dates and don't turn the heat on and wear the same clothes every day, I could maybe possibly afford this car. As banks and creditors do, hey, you got a pulse, here you go, your credit score is okay, boom, you can have a loan. So great. So I get approved for the loan. I go out to find a car. I look and I find a bunch of them. I go drive a few. The first one I find, it's not the black. It's actually this really, really dark red. And I decide, you know what? Like, I'm going to go drive it at least. I know mechanically it's identical, but it's not the exact car I'm going to end up buying. So let's work out. So I call the sales guy. And I go out to look at the car, and we get in the car, we go do a test drive, and the guy tells me, he's like, actually, this car used to be my own personal car. I bought it. It was just too big. I didn't like it. And I traded it in. So this actually was my car we're test driving. I was like, well, cool. I said, well, look, man, like, this thing's got a pretty good V8 in it. And I say that meaning that like in the mid 90s, this thing was a powerful car. Nowadays with the, M-Class BMWs and the AMG Mercedes and the Hellcats, and there's powerful cars now is a completely different story than when a powerful car was 30 years ago. But back then, it was a pretty powerful car. And so I told the guy, I said, look, I'm not buying this thing to go slowly. Do you mind if I, kind of drive it enthusiastically? And he looks over at me, he says, look, honestly, like I always wanted to see what this car would do, but I was afraid to do it since it was mine. Now that it's not mine anymore, let's tear this thing up. I don't even like my job. And I was like, you got the right guy. Let's do it. So he and I proceed to head out all around like the Roswell Alpharetta area. We go on like a 2-hour test drive and just bluesmobile this thing. I am, just power sliding it. And that's the great thing about big, heavy cars. You get a twitchy sports car and you try to power slide it or hang the tail out. The traction can often overcome the inertia of the car, and it'll grip all of a sudden and shoot you off into the bushes or rip it out of your hands. But a big, heavy car, or like my truck, will always just pull the tires wherever the mass of the car is going. So big, heavy cars are fantastic for drifting and sliding around. We're doing burnouts. We're doing like reverse 180s. We're racing people on the highway, just pegging this car out, going back like old subdivisions, just doing donuts. Like, we don't trash it, but we're like the guys in Ferris Bueller that like steal the Ferrari. Like, we're joyriding this thing. It's such a great time. No way I'm buying this car now after what I've just done to it. The sales guy's on board. And that's one of those like rare moments where like, he was on board with doing irresponsible things with the car. And again, we weren't being like risking people's lives, but we were just going out and driving this thing spiritedly. So anyway, I'm in love with the car. It's fast, it's fun. You can hang the tail out, it makes cool noises, it's comfortable. I love this thing, so I'm definitely sold on this. So we take it back to the dealership, and again, this was the dark red one. I really wanted the black one, but I thanked him for the test ride and told him I'd keep him in mind, and he just had a good time driving around and getting the car around. So I split and I set out to go find cars. Well, I finally find like the one, and many people, Ed's mentioned on this show many times, that he's found like the one car. It's just right. And I finally find the one. I come across a guy who has just retired from the General Motors plants where they built, or the plant where they built the Super Sport Impala. And he had, I guess, being the line manager, was able to get a gold kit put on it, like the emblems. They he bought it and he'd ordered the car, and I guess as a special treat for him, or maybe he asked for it. I can't remember, but this was the only factory gold kit Super Sport Impala ever made, and it was right here in Georgia. And I was just, I'm not really a gold kit kind of guy, but which was with the black and the gold, it just looked cool. And I don't mean the wheels, but just the emblems had the little gold. It was such a cool looking car. So I'm excited. I've got the loan ready to go. I go to the bank. I get the check. I'm just so excited. And I didn't even own a car at the time. I had to borrow a car just to go get this thing. Got a friend to go up with me. And it's about a 3 hour drive to get to this car. And the whole way, I'm so excited, but it's like in the cartoons. You got like the good you and the bad one. Like the good one's going, like, this thing's kind of expensive. And then the bad one's like, oh, it's going to be awesome. You're going to do burnouts. And the good one's like, you're going to really struggle. Your girlfriend's not going to like how broke you are. And the bad one's like, forget her. You'll find a new girlfriend. This thing's awesome. So I'm just got this like dichotomy of these two, like the responsible me and the irresponsible me. And by the time I get to the guy's house, like I've got check in hand. He knows I'm coming. Like everything's working. I've got my dream car, but it was just going to put such a financial pinch on me that my life would have been so hard. Like I would have had to live in this car pretty much. And I wanted it so badly. And it was just one of the hardest things. But the responsible me finally won out, and I get to the guy's house, I knock on his door, and I just said, hey, look, I've been thinking about this car for months, years even, and your car is the one. He like bought it, retired, realized he wasn't going to drive it that much. The car only had like 1,600 miles on it. I mean, it was just the one, but I just could not afford it. And I told him, I said, hey, look, I'm sorry for wasting your time. I'll be happy to relist the car for you again, because I know you probably turned some people down after I told you I was coming. And he said, well, I understand. Yeah, I've been there myself. He said, tell you what, here's the keys. Why don't you take it for a drive though, just to experience it. I can tell you love the car, and I tell you appreciate it. So let's just go for a drive. So he hops in the passenger seat, and we just took a nice little leisure. He lived up in the mountains, and we just kind of did a little 20-minute drive in it. And I kind of got my moment in the car at least to touch it and feel it, and drive past the storefront, sort of see myself driving it, just get that little bit of ownership experience, even if simulated. And I thanked him, and I gave him the car back, and that was kind of the end of my search for a Super Sport Impala for a while. Changed jobs. I kind of got into off-roading. I'd been riding motorcycles the whole time. Got into racing. I just had too many other projects, and that dream of that car never left. But I just kind of my pursuit of it sort of went by the wayside. Years later, 25 years later, I'm working on a project car with my buddy Bradley, and I'm going out to his house one day, and I passed this house, and it was on the kind of country road going out to his place, and it was one of those houses that's just got like there's like a house, and like there's no yard, it's just dirt, and there's just kind of cars parked there, and they seem to be like they would like flip cars. There's always different cars there, and some of them are on blocks, some of them are taken apart. There'd be a dump truck there sometimes, a dumpster others. There's dogs all over the place, and a couple of shops and outbuildings in the field out back, and it's just not really a junkyard, but sort of close. But for some reason, right in the middle of it is a 96 Super Sport Impala. And I stopped a couple of times and knocked on the door, never got anybody, and just, really wanted to see. And the car was for sale. And it, by the looks of it, it'd been beat on pretty hard. It was a rough example, but to kind of take a page out of Ed's book, a bad example of a really cool car. So I'm thinking, all right, well, maybe this thing's going to be cheap. So a few more times to find somebody at the house, and nobody ever answers the door. But one day, as I'm driving past, I see some guys like way out in the field behind this house. They're like unloading some other cars way back in the woods back there. I'm like, oh, finally, I can at least find out like how much was the car run, whatever. So I park my car. I get out and, the house is over here. There's kind of a shop and some stuff, and there's a bunch of dog houses and just scruffy dirt and everything all over the place and bushes. It's the middle of summertime, so it's hot. And the best way to get there is just to kind of walk right between the middle of all these buildings and everything to go out to this field. So I parked the car, leave my phone in the car, all that kind of stuff, just hop out. As I go walking, like kind of go past this old junk truck with a bunch of stuff in the back of it. As I'm walking between the house and the barn and all these other buildings, all of a sudden, like it must be like, I don't know if they were into like dog fighting or what, but suddenly it was like more pit bulls and Rottweilers and other scary dogs I've ever seen in my life all just come out. They're all on chains, but they just start coming out from under buildings and under pump houses and bushes and just just everywhere. And I'm like some football player just jumping and dodging and running and like they're everywhere. I'm completely surrounded. And the only thing to save myself, there was an old truck just parked there on blocks. And I just ran and just sort of like, high jumped, Olympic high jump my way up into the back of the truck. And there's like a bunch of fertilizer or something bags in the back of the truck. And the dogs are all like small enough they can't get into the back of the truck. But now I'm like stranded. And this is like the movies where like, you're like on the rock with the crocodiles coming up or something. Like suddenly I'm like just out of breath. I'm like high stepped and dodged about 20 dogs and they're all just all around the truck. I'm surrounded. Like I'm thinking like, can I call Bradley? Can he come like shoot his way in and say, no, my phone's in the car. Crap. I'm kind of like around the corner from the barn from these guys now. So like they can't see me. Dogs are still going crazy. I'm just stranded on this old pickup truck thinking like, how did I get here? Like 40 seconds ago, I'm excited to buy my dream car. Now I'm about to get mauled by a bunch of dogs. So I start looking and I'm looking at like the dirt where all the chain, like the dogs, of course, have like gone to the links of all of their chains. Like in the old Foghorn Leghorn cartoons with the dog would run out of the doghouse, he would just draw a line and stop where the chain would. I could kind of see where the chains would stop. And I thought, you know what? If I get a running start off the cab of this truck, hit the hood just right, and push off the lip of the hood, I might be able to make the edge of the dirt line where the dogs were. And then I just kind of took my arm and kind of like made a motion like I was going to jump. And a few of them went that way, and the other few looked to see where they were going. And I just turned and I ran over the fertilizer, up the roof of the truck, down onto the hood, and just jumped like in the movies. Barely made the edge of the line where these dogs could get, hit the ground, rolled, skinned up my elbow, got my shirt all dirty, rolled out, made it. The dogs were now at this end, but I was safe. And at this point, the people have come back from the field and yelled at the dogs and made the dogs go away. And I was like, sir, I'm sorry. I just saw you back in the field. I didn't know you had all your dogs here. He's like, oh yeah, them dogs won't bite. I was like, I'm pretty sure they're fixing to eat me like a bag of hot dogs. But anyway, I drove the car. It was such a ratty version. It takes a pretty ratty version of a car to discourage me, but it was so ratty. It was not even worth the quite optimistic amount they were asking for it. So my search for a super sport Impala continues, but it was definitely not going to be that one. And that one was absolutely not the one to have risked my life for.
Whether you see the car in person or buy it sight unseen, when you buy a pre-owned car, you need to get an inspection done by a qualified professional. And the nationwide network of trained inspectors from the Lemon Squad is the best way to accomplish that. They give you a great deal and a great bit of information about any car you're looking at very quickly. They've been supporting VINwiki now for 2 years, and I use them personally because when I'm buying a car, I need to know the full story. So check them out now at the link in the description below and use the code VINwiki for 10% off and never buy a used car without the Lemon Squad.